Okay, so I am going to help you guys do your the rest of your graphic organizer. You should have this already, the ethos portion. We did this yesterday as a class. If you don't, pause this video right now and make sure you have that box completed. Um, if you look down here, here's an example of pathos. I want you to write this one. There are many choices that you can use in Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Jonathan Edwards uses a lot of emotional appeals. You have a lot of fear tactics, a lot of loaded language, and things like that. But this is a great line. This is, oh, these paragraph things are wrong. I'm going to put paragraph 11. And then here, this line, the, the bow of God's wrath is bent, and the arrow is made ready on the string. Let me look. I think that is in paragraph. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it was the bow of God's wrath. I think that's paragraph 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. It's on the second page of your green packet. It's right here, the very beginning of paragraph 6. If you remember when we were doing our saying and doing, we said that that was an example of pathos. It was a great imagery. We have some loaded language, but specifically it is fear tactics. Again, you can pause this video to copy these two down, but you can also look at your saying and doing paper. The bow of God's wrath, remember wrath is extreme hate through anger, is bent, and the arrow is made ready on the string. And the justice bends the arrow at your heart, so at the heart of sinners. And then you have this phrase right here. At any moment, right, this angry God can strike that arrow into your heart, and it can be drunk with blood. Because you are a sinner. And so you have this great visual imagery, right? This loaded language that creates fear. And that's what we're putting over here. That is his rhetorical technique. This is how he's trying to be persuasive. There is only one example of logos in the text, just like there was only one example of ethos. The example we found, I believe, was in paragraph 5. Sorry, this was paragraph 6, and the example of logos was in paragraph 5. This was a logical process. We had said that it might possibly be a logical fallacy, a slippery slope. But if you don't have this down, again, this is in your saying and doing paper, but we're going to also put it here. So that thus it is that natural men are held in the hand of God over the pit of hell. They have deserved the fiery pit and are already sentenced to it. We had used a different line in our saying and doing paper. If we look back at paragraph 5, it was this first line. And this phrase right here in particular, natural men, remember, unconverted men, men who were born with original sin, right? They deserve here to go to hell, and they're sentenced to it. Because they've done nothing to lessen his anger. Remember, we said that in the saying part. And what is Jonathan Edwards doing here? He's giving us this false logical process. It's a logical fallacy that because you were born with original sin, you're going to end up in hell, right? Because you're unconverted. So therefore, you should convert. And that's what we put over here. So go ahead again and pause this video if you need to fill in the rest of the boxes. All right, now on a separate piece of paper, get out a lined sheet of paper, you are going to copy down exactly what I am going to type over here. On your rhetoric test next week, you're going to type it onto a Google Doc on Google Classroom. But for today, you're going to handwrite what I am typing. At the same time, I do want you to label. So when I make a comment, for example here, I can press this and add a comment. You are going to label on the side of your paper. But when you do write your written part for your rhetoric test next week, you're going to change this to your last name. And then you're going to fill in your name. Well, I'm just going to leave it as your name so that you know. My name, make sure you spell it right. The class name, which is English 3P. You don't have to write any of this on your paper, but I do want to show you. Don't forget to change your period number. This is how, this is MLA format, by the way, all of this. And the date specifically, notice the number goes first, there's no comma. Okay, so you would change that next week on your rhetoric test when you're typing it. Today again, you would put your name, date, and period in the upper right hand corner. Don't forget to highlight it. And then the title will be Edwards Rhetorical Analysis. Or we could put Sinners. Let's do that. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. Rhetorical analysis. Okay. So the first thing that we need in our idea chunk, and remember an idea chunk has the claim or main idea or topic sentence that includes the title of the piece, the author, and then just briefly what are you going to talk about in this paragraph. And then that is followed with some evidence and then some explanation. Remember, we're going to do that evidence and explanation 3 times. One each for ethos, one for pathos, and one for logos. So each of these things, this will become a sentence, and this will become 1 to 2 sentences, and so forth. On your rhetoric test, I'll give you a graphic organizer so you can organize your thoughts this way, and that will help you then write your paragraph. Again, you're writing this on a separate piece of lined paper, and this will become the template that you can use next week for your rhetoric test when you analyze a different text on your own. Okay. So the first thing that we need is a topic sentence, so let's include the title. So and I'm putting the title in quotation marks because it is it's a speech. It's a short work. So in Sinners in the hands of an angry God. I put a comma there. Let's put the author, Jonathan Edwards. And if we go back to your green copy, if we scroll up here, it has some information about him. So Jonathan Edwards, remember we said that he was acclaimed as a pastor. And so we can add some of that information. We can even add the year that this speech was given, or the sermon was given. So sinners in the hands of an angry God. And we can put the year. Well, we don't have to. I don't want to confuse you. So in sinners in the hands of an angry God, Jonathan Edwards, an acclaimed pastor. gave a sermon that uses persuasive rhetoric Sinners in the hands of an angry God, Jonathan Edwards, an acclaimed pastor, gave a sermon that uses persuasive rhetoric. Or we can change that. That uses rhetorical appeals to persuade his congregation to convert to Christianity and devote themselves to appeals and devote themselves to their religion. So again, if you need more time, pause this video so you can write this again on your lined paper. So we have our title, we have the author, right? We have some information about the author if you have that. We mention what Edwards is doing, rhetorical appeals, and then what this paragraph is going to be about, how he uses rhetorical appeals to persuade his congregation to convert to Christianity. Okay. So I'm going to label this. So once you have that written down, make sure you label on the side. I want you to label this topic sentence. All right, let's move on. So let's start with ethos first. So let's take this information and we're going to create a claim, evidence sentence, and explanation. So we need to do those three things: claim, evidence, explanation. Again, if it helps you to use the idea chunk graphic organizer that I have, the yellow one, it's there on the table for you to get. Just grab one. So going back here, the first thing we need to do is talk about, let's have our claim sentence. So let's start with, again, just what is ethos, okay? So Edwards, and remember when you refer to the author, you're always referring to his last name. So Edwards appeals to the audience's sense of morality by referencing specific events in the Bible. So that's our claim sentence. If you need to pause the video again to copy that down, go ahead. But we need to label that. Okay, so I'm going to label that on the side as my claim, okay, for ethos. Okay. So we have our claim. Now we need our evidence, and that is this sentence right here, the one that you have in your or on your graphic organizer. Let's do a direct quote. So this is how you do a direct quote. Since I already used Edwards here, I don't want to repeat that again. It might be a little repetitive. Edwards this, Edwards that. So we could put the orator, somebody who's speaking, states, okay, comma, quotation marks. Is that, let me check first if in paragraph 11 if that is in the middle of a sentence or if it's its own sentence. Paragraph 11. Okay, so I am going to quote this sentence here. Remember, we use some ellipses, the dot dot dots to take away a sentence. But notice how this is, a complete sentence. So I'm going to capitalize many. So the orator states, and this is a direct quote. I have states right here, and I have a comma, and now the quotation mark. So now I'm just going to write that down. So many are daily coming, dot, dot, dot. So our ellipses, with their hearts filled with love to Jesus. Remember, we use these brackets because in the original text, it states him, but we want to make sure the reader knows who that pronoun is referring to. So let's go back here. Oops. To Jesus, who has loved and washed them from their sins in his own blood. So we need to end that with quotation marks. Remember, quotation marks always come in pairs. So we have one right here. We have the end, its pair right here at the end of the quote. And we need to cite this. So we have Edwards and the paragraph number, which is paragraph 11. Notice where I put the period. The period goes after the citation. All right. Again, if you need to pause the video to copy this down, go ahead. And after you have this copied, make sure you label it on the side. This is now our evidence. Evidence, don't forget about the citation. So include citation. You can actually circle the citation if that will help you remember to include it. So if you want, after you label that this sentence right here is the evidence sentence, then go ahead and circle Edwards 11 and put citation next to that so that you remember to include that. All right, so we have our claim right there. We have our evidence sentence. This is a direct quote. Now we need an explanation. We need to talk about this, and that is basically this part. We just need to put that in better wording. Again, at any time, you can pause this video if you need time to copy. All right, let's go to the explanation. What can we say about this quote, right? And we are connecting it to our claim. So we need to connect our claim, the fact that Edwards is using ethos, right, to persuade us that he's referencing something in the Bible and that he is referencing morality. And we need to connect that with this specific line and say something about it, right? A good way to try to get you to not just restate, but to say more is to ask yourself, so what? Well, so what that he uses ethos? So what that he says this right here, right? And that will help you get to this part. So let's put that into sentences. Let's say, let me go back and look at it. This is actually pretty good. We could just put this. Edward's purpose is to inspire hope, so that people will accept Christ. Okay, so let's do that. By alluding, and that's a different form of the word allusion, by alluding to stories in the Bible and comparing Jesus's. Notice this. This is, I know people will think that's weird, but Jesus is one person. So this right here is singular. One person, one Jesus. But we have singular possessive. So apostrophe S. Rules are different everywhere. I think in England, they don't do that. They just put the apostrophe. But if you just have the apostrophe, if you don't have this S, here, it's considered plural possessive. So we just want to put apostrophe S. So comparing Jesus's worshipers. I spelled that wrong. Worshipers. Comparing Jesus' worshipers to those in his congregation. By alluding to stories in the Bible and comparing Jesus' worshipers to those in his congregation, Edwards provides hope to his audience that they can attain God's forgiveness. They can attain God's forgiveness. Notice here again, apostrophe S, because this is singular possessive. Okay, God is one person, and apostrophe S because the forgiveness belongs to him. They can attain God's forgiveness and be. Oh, let's just end there. They can attain God's forgiveness. I was going to put and be born again. Let's see. I'll just put that. Okay. Let's write maybe one more sentence. Remember, in the explanation, you should probably have 2 sentences at least. 3 is better. By alluding to stories in the Bible and comparing Jesus' worshipers to those in his congregation, Edwards provides hope to his audience that they can attain God's forgiveness. In choosing a morally, remember this is referencing morality, in choosing a morally sound decision through conversion. Conversion is another form of the word of being converted, right? He doesn't want you to be an unconverted man. In choosing a morally sound decision through, conversion, people can avoid the fires of hell. So let's label that. Again, at any time, pause the video so that you can write this on your paper. And when you're done writing it, go ahead and label this explanation. Explanation. Okay. So again, on your paper, you should have the title, you should have this topic sentence, and then you should have this first idea chunk, claim, evidence, explanation. You should have those things labeled. Okay, don't forget to circle the citation. All right, now we're continuing. Now we have to do it for both pathos and logos. So pathos, we're going to write all this, and then we'll do that for logos. To make everything flow, though, let's add a transition word. So I'm going to use the word additionally. I want you to circle that word, and then just like you circled the citation, you circled this and labeled it citation, I want you to circle this word on your paper additionally, and I want you to label it transition word. Or just transition. So additionally, and now we need a claim, right? So we have our claim, or we had our claim here for ethos, right? That he appeals to the audience's sense of morality. So now we have to create a claim for pathos. Additionally, Edwards, again, always refer to the author by his or her last name. Edwards appeals to his audience's emotions by his use of pathos. So your claim can be as simple as that. Oh, through. You can use through. Additionally, Edwards appeals to his audience's emotions through his use of pathos. You could word it differently by employing pathos. That's fine. So I'm going to well, let's not label this yet. Let's continue. Let's do the evidence sentence. So we have our claim. We said what he's using next, pathos, which is an emotional appeal. So in your claim sentence, make sure you not only tell me which rhetorical appeal you're going to talk about. So, okay, I'm talking about pathos now, but that you know what pathos is. Emotional appeals. Okay, you did that here. Ethos, audience's sense of morality. Okay, so additionally, Edwards appeals to his audience's emotions through his use of pathos. Let's write our evidence sentence by using this great line right here. Okay. So let's put this time I'm going to use an embedded quote. So that means I'm going to take this sentence and make it part of, instead of just saying Edward writes, instead of just copying it just like this is a direct quote. Edward writes, Edward states, and then you have the sentence. Notice this capital letter, right? Or that capital word. I'm going to embed it within my sentence. Okay, and you're going to see the difference right here. So, additionally, Edwards appeals to his audience's emotions through his use of pathos. We're going to talk about loaded language. So, loaded language and imagery work together to pierce his I was going to put his listeners' hearts. To pierce his listeners' hearts. I wanted to use the word pierce because we're talking about emotion. Loaded language and imagery work together to pierce his listeners' hearts when he explains that. Okay, so notice right here I'm using the word that. When he explains that, and now I'm quoting the line from the text, that it is nothing but the mere pleasure of God that keeps the arrow one moment from being made drunk with their blood. And that was paragraph 6. And notice I put the brackets around the word there because in the original text it uses the word your. but I want to make it make sense because I'm talking about the audience and the listener in the third person in this paragraph. So I'm changing that, but I have to put those brackets. And then we're just going to put 6. We don't have to necessarily put Edward 6 because, again, there's only one author here. Oops, I forgot my quotation marks. Remember, they always come in pairs. Okay. And then the period comes after the citation. All right, so I have my claim with the transition word right here. I have my evidence sentence. This is an embedded quote. And now I need my explanation, again, which is this part right here, the analysis part. Okay. So again, if you need to pause the video to copy this down, go ahead. Right now I'm going to write the explanation. So again, you want to ask yourself, so what? Okay, so what Edwards is using pathos? So what that he's talking about this arrow, and he's using this imagery. Oh, I spelled that wrong. He's using this imagery that sinners who don't convert will end up in hell, and this could happen to them. That this arrow that God shoots them down with will be drunk with their blood. Okay, what is this doing? It's creating fear, right? It's creating fear in the hearts of his congregation to persuade them to convert. So let's put that. What did we put here? I like all of this. Let's see. Edwards. I think we should just write this. This sentence right here. I like that one. So I'm going to write that along with another sentence. So let's see. The symbolic arrow represents God's judgment of those who do not, did I spell that wrong? Judgment of those who do not accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. And then I copied and pasted this from here, but let me retype it. Edwards purposefully seeks to ignite fear in his congregants. Again, this is a form of the word congregation. Okay. So let's see. The symbolic arrow represents God's judgment of those who do not accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. Edwards purposefully seeks to ignite fear in his congregants to convince them to be born again. So I want you to label all of that. So you have claim, which which is for pathos. You have your evidence sentence. And your evidence sentence, you can use a direct quote. That is the easier one. Just putting Edward states, Edwards writes, comma, and then copying down the sentence straight from the text. Or you can use an embedded quote like we did here. It's up to you. I just wanted to show you the different options. And then we have our explanation. Remember, with the explanation, you don't want to just restate what you've already said. You want to connect them and say something new, something else, right? The so what part. All right, so now we just have one more, and then we have to write our concluding sentence. So now we have to do the same thing for logos. Okay, we're going to write this part, and then we'll end it with a concluding sentence, and then you'll be done. And this is what you will have to do next week, but on your own. But you can use this as an example, as a template to help you. Okay? So now let's talk about logos. So let's do our claim sentence. Oh, we need a transition word. So finally. Okay. So I'm going to label that. Oh, I can't label it, but you can. So circle finally and put transition or transition word. Finally, Edwards finally Edwards uses a logical process to explain why use a logical process to convince. Finally, Edwards uses a logical process to convince or you know what, let me change that. Finally, Edwards to convince his audience of the importance of converting. Did I ever use that sentence? Okay. Finally, Edwards uses a logical process so basically in your claim sentence, I just want to know what rhetorical appeal are you using now? So you're using logos. Okay, so now you're talking about logos. All right, so now we need our evidence sentence. And here, if you want to define a little bit, if in your if on your rhetoric test you see that the person is using facts, statistics, or data, you can say the author is using logos to persuade his audience to believe or whatever it is that the person's trying to persuade you to do through the use of facts or statistics or data or research. So you could do that there. Here I'm just saying logical process because that's what we're going to talk about. And this is our evidence right here. This was in paragraph 5. Oops. The thing about natural men, right, being sent to hell because they deserve to go there. So let's put that. I might use a direct quote. Let's see. Go back there. Where's paragraph 5? Let's see. No, I'm going to embed it because I don't want to write this part. Okay, so I'll embed this part of the text. Edwards. Oh, where am I? Oh, sorry. Finally, Edwards uses a logical process to convince his audience of the importance of converting. He states that natural men are held in the hand of God over the pit of hell. I'm going to just put natural men have deserved the fiery pit. Natural men. Oops. Oh, natural men. I wonder if I can copy and paste this. He states that natural men are held in the hand of God He states that natural men are held in the hand of God over the pit of hell. States that natural men are held in the hand of God. I'm going to split it up. Since they have deserved the fiery pit and are already sentenced to it. So I'm going to delete the rest of that. Okay. And this is paragraph 5. Again, if you need to pause the video, go ahead to do that, to copy it down. So again, here's the evidence sentence. What did I just do? What is this? Sorry, this is supposed to be... this part right here was pathos. Just make sure you're labeling it correctly. There we go. And then this is logos right here. So we have our claim sentence with our transition word. We're referring to the author by his last name, capitalizing it because it's a proper noun. Here we're embedding the quote, but I did split it up. Notice I have quotation marks here and here. They come in pairs, and then here and here. And then I have my citation. Okay. And then let's say something about it. If we go back here, here. It says this. So let's see what we can write. Here, Edwards tries to create the logical argument that if one chooses to deny the necessity of conversion, then one. Notice I'm using third person here. I'm not saying then you, right? Then one must accept the consequences of his or her actions. Okay. And there it's implied that that would be going to hell. All right, so here let's label it. Again, if you need to pause, you can pause to get this idea chunk right here for logos. Oops. Again, it would be better if you would write more than one sentence for your explanation. So I have my rhetorical appeal, my claim, which is that I'm talking about logos. I have my evidence. Again, you use a direct quote, you use an embedded quote, and then my explanation. All right. And now, finally, we're at the end. I know, I'm tired too, which is why I only wrote one sentence here for the explanation. So now let's just wrap it up. What would our concluding sentence be? We can say, Edwards. Again, notice this is that apostrophe S because it's singular possessive. So Edwards' use of rhetoric effectively conveys his message to the audience that conversion is the only way to save themselves from eternal damnation. Scary stuff. All right, so that's it. So that is a nice way to wrap it up, right? You need something to start it off. You have your topic sentence right here, text, author, right? And what the paragraph will be about, rhetorical appeals, analyzing his use of logos, ethos, pathos. And then you, after you went through, you had 3 different idea chunks for ethos, logos, pathos, each one with a claim, saying which rhetorical appeal you're going to use, right, and what that rhetorical appeal is, your evidence sentence, and your explanation with transition words throughout to make it flow. Now you're just going to wrap it up with a nice concluding sentence. So we want to label this our concluding sentence. And that is it. Okay, so I'm going to stop it now.